Hey everyone, my name is Nick and welcome back to the channel, and we continue our mission to look at the units within the Thousand Sons. Can we make individual units or combinations of units better than the sum of their component parts with the strats, with the pacts, with the stratagems, with the psychic powers? And today we are taking a look at the mighty Forgefiend. A lot of lists online are not overly featuring these awesome demon engines, because they don't have the core keyword. Everyone seems to be in favour of rubric scarabs and contemptors and hellbrutes. That seems to be the way that everyone's going. Are people missing a trick with the Forgefiend? We're going to take a look in this video. So let's get straight into it. So let's take a look at the Forgefiend then, and the base stats. It has a move of 8, a weapon skill and ballistic skill of 3+, a strength and toughness of 7, 12 wounds, 5 attacks, a leadership of 8, and a save of 3+. As with every other unit in the edition these days, anything with 10 or more wounds does have a degrading profile. So as it starts to bleed wounds, the profile does drop, and no different with the Forgefiend. So that stat line is effective for 7 or more wounds. When we get bracketed down to 4 to 6 wounds, our move drops to 6 inches, our weapon skill and ballistic skill down to 4+. And then finally, when we are on death's door at 1 to 3 wounds remaining, we drop to 4 inch of movement and our weapon skill and ballistic skill of 5+. The Forgefiend comes with several abilities, the first being demonic, and that gives the model a 5+ invulnerable save. So we don't get that from the Brotherhood of Sorcerers, the same as the rubrics and so on. Demonic models come with a 5+ invulnerable save, typically across the board. We also have infernal regeneration, so in our command phase, this model regains a single lost wound. Now this can bring us out of some of those bracketed stages as we go through the game. And then finally, as with most vehicles and monsters, it can explode. So when the model is destroyed, you roll a d6 before removing it from play, and on a 6+, or a 6, could be a 6+, it is a 6, and each unit within 6 inches suffers a d3 mortal wounds. So that would be friend or foe. Comes with a number of faction keywords and regular keywords. So faction keywords: Chaos, Tzeentch, Heretic Astartes, Thousand Sons, and it can be in a Great Cult. So it'll adopt the Great Cult keyword when you put it in that particular detachment. And the generic keywords are Vehicle, Demon, Demon Engine, and Forgefiend. The Forgefiend is a heavy support option for us and comes in at 8 power if you're playing that particular way, or the associated points at 110 points for the base model, and then it's 25 points per heavy Hades autocannon and 15 points per ectoplasma cannon. By default though, the model is officially comes with 2 heavy Hades autocannons and Forgefiend jaws. So the jaws are free, so 110 points plus 2 lots of 25 means that the model is 160 points with 2 Hades autocannons, but we can mix and match with the ectoplasma. So the cheapest variant then would therefore be 110 points plus 2 ectoplasma cannons, making it 140 points. That would be the cheapest variant you can have. You can add a third ectoplasma cannon to replace those jaws. That will obviously make it up to an additional 15 points, giving you 155 points. Or you can have 2 Hades autocannons and the ectoplasma in the mouth, taking you up to a total of 175 points as the most expensive build option. In the previous codex though, I really found Forgefiends were quite command point heavy. They needed a bit of investment to keep them going. You wanted to try and regen wounds on them, you wanted to try and improve their ability to hit because they had mediocre weapon skill, they were 4+. That has since changed with this increase to 3+ with their ballistic skill and weapon skill. Although both now, as we discussed, degrade along with their movement and so on. It's interesting for me because Forgefiends can shoot those autocannons in combat now, which we couldn't do before. And with a strength of 7 and 5 attacks base, getting them in combat isn't such a bad thing. If they get tagged in combat, it's not as bad as it used to be. Guns are also better. So the Hades autocannon at 48 inch range and AP -2, very handy for taking on, you know, the plethora of infantry that is now double wounded. And being strength 8 means that they're wounding on 2s on the most part, which is pretty good. What's pretty interesting to me now though is ectoplasma as an option. Didn't really see much play with ectoplasma before, but that's had a significant buff as well. Not only are they 36-inch range, they are a flat 3 damage blast. Yes, you still got random shots though. They are heavy D3 each, strength 7, AP -3, flat 3 damage blast ability. So you could potentially put out 9 shots, or you could roll badly and put out 3. So there is a little bit of a gamble, but that's the fickle nature of Tzeentch for you. On average though, you should be putting out 6 of these shots with that flat 3 damage. And flat 3 damage is pretty big in this edition. Next question to answer really is there a specific cult that you should be looking to put this particular unit into? And in my personal opinion, no. You should be building your cult around your scarabs and your rubrics and your characters, rather than building it around this particular unit. One of the big downsides, a lot of people are running duplicity for the movement ability. One of the big things with that is Master Misinformator, where you get to redeploy at the start of the turn before the first battle turn or first turn begins, but it excludes vehicles, which means that where you put your Forgefiend is where it's going to stay. You can't sit there and react to your opponent and then say, do you know what, I'm going to move it or hide it or whatever you're going to do. You are going to be stuck with it, and so you're going to have to live with that, and it is a big footprint model. So you are looking for semi-sensible boards that have, you know, a reasonable amount of line of sight blocking. If it's going to be sat out in the open, you might struggle with this type of unit, but if you've got a sensible board, then you're going to have abilities to, you know, create firing lanes and, you know, screen the unit itself from incoming fire if you lose turn 1, for example. So let's take a look at the stratagems that can buff our Forgefiend on their own then. There are only really 3. The first one is Ensorcelled Infusion for 1 command point, and that's going to add an extra AP to our ranged weapons. So depending which ones you're going to field, the Heavy Hades autocannon now becomes an AP -3 and the Ectoplasma at AP -4 just for that 1 command point. Personally, I think that really benefits the Hades more than the Ectoplasma, just because of the guaranteed number of shots when you're going to call in that stratagem. This is purely because when you want to use the stratagem, once you've selected that unit to shoot, so you don't know how many shots you're going to get. So if you really do fluff your random number of Ectoplasma shots, this isn't going to be a good spend. You just don't know whether you're going to get 3 or potentially 9 shots. But however, the Hades is so consistent, that's where you want to be spending it on that particular build. Next up then is Biomechanical Mutation. This gives us, for 1 command point, a 5+ shrug or a feel no pain, whatever you want to call it, to any mortal wounds inflicted on it. So normally we wouldn't be able to save against those. This is going to give us that ability to ignore some of that damage. Then finally, Warpflame Gargoyles, again another cheap one at 1 command point, and units in melee suffer D3 mortal wounds on a 4+. Once they're in combat with your Forgefiend. Now that does reduce down to a 6+ against vehicles or characters. Moving on to psychic powers, there are a number of usual suspects that are going to be able to make our Forgefiend that bit better. The usual Glamour and Weaver, so -1 to hit, and also a 4+ invulnerable save will make it a bit more survivable. You're usually going to be casting that on other units though. Depending on the scenario, it could come in a bit handy. Sadly though, Temporal Manipulation, which I used to use, I believe, in the last edition, about recovering damage to that particular model, can't use it with vehicles anymore. So sadly that one's gone away. However, one I do like to use is Perplex. A Malediction power here, and if manifested, select an enemy unit within 24 inches of the Psyker, and until the start of your next psychic phase, each time that unit is selected to shoot, units more than 24 inches away cannot be selected. So if you have an anti-tank type unit that is looking to line up your Forgefiend, this is where you're going to kick that in, because the Forgefiend is going to stay well out of range with its own effective ranged weapons from that anti-tank type unit. So probably one of the key ones for me then is Perplex. From Discipline of Vengeance then, Presage is usual. I would say this is the bonus to hit. So we get to add 1 to the attack as hit roll. This does mean that our Forgefiend is going to be hitting that bit better. I think I used to use this a lot in the previous edition, especially when it only had a ballistic skill of 4+. However, you are going to be looking to use that on your Scarab Occult as much as possible. So depending whether you want to teleport your Scarab Occults or you want to deep strike them, so teleport using crystals or whatever to move them around the board, or your Cult of Duplicity, for example, you may want to use Presage on the first turn with your shooty Forgefiend. Just in that first turn, just to get those shots off before your Scarabs turn up, because that's typically where you're going to be applying that psychic power. The only one I can think of note in addition to that is Empiric Guidance. This gives you an extra 6-inch range to rapid fire and heavy weapons. It's an easy cast of 4, which means we're getting off on a 3+, so anything other than a perils, that is going to go, unless it's denied. But adding 6-inch range to Hades autocannons, you're probably going to be in range on the most part. Might be better spent on your ectoplasma. But again, before you even get to the shooting phase, you don't know how many shots that's going to get. So again, a more tricky one, and you might be better off using that on the Inferno bolt guns, for example. And then finally, from Infernal packs, then Malefic Maelstrom, which is such a bit of a go-to these days. I think it's adding 1 to the strength characteristic of an attack, and that can be any Thousand Sons unit within 24 inches of the Infernal Master. So this can really give you that extra point of strength. So strength 8 on your ectoplasma, strength 9 on your Hades if you really need it. But yeah, again, that is going to be typically used elsewhere. You know, strength 5 Inferno bolt guns is probably where it's going to be at. So maybe just on the first turn you might want to do that if you get the chance, but you're probably going to be spending that further down the line. But in summary then, the Forgefiend can do pretty well as a standalone unit. It's not going to take up too much utility to be as effective as it needed to be in the previous edition. It's not command point heavy, it's not stratagem heavy anymore. You don't need to spend any effort really on pacts. It should do a pretty good job for a good few turns without any of that additional support. So there we go, that is my thoughts on the mighty Forgefiend Daemon engine. A, it's a lovely model. B, it's reasonably well costed. The 160, 155, depending on the weapon loadout, is quite tasty. At some point, we are going to run out of Cabal points. We are going to run out of smites. And sometimes we're just going to have to resort to raw shooting power. And we have ways of adjusting that with the strength and so on. So is this something that maybe we'll see? If you can keep it alive into sort of 3, 4 and 5 in those turns, once those Cabal points start to potentially dwindle, are we going to see the rise of the Forgefiend? Are we going to need this for Raider spam? Are we going to need it for all those AdMech vehicles? That flat 3 damage and potentially 9 shots can't be ignored. It's really good AP. So in my opinion, I think people are potentially overlooking it. The favour to go for Contemptors, not everyone has access to Forge World money. Volkite cannons have been out of stock forever, and that seems to be the competitive meta. You know, the core keyworded Contemptor with 16-shot Volkites with all the buffs thrown onto those. I can see why people do use them, but not everyone has access to them, and I know certain people might be 3D printing them and so on to give them those weapon options. But you know, if we're talking pure Codex, which just on the desk I'm pointing down here because you can't see that, can you? It's the Codex down here. Pure Codex stuff, I think these are not to be ignored. So that's what I think. But of course, I'd love to know what you think. So in the comment section below, are you overlooking these? Do you think they have a place? That's where I want to hear from you. So either way, hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to like, comment, and of course subscribe, please. And I'll see you all on the next video.